Well, Justin Montgomery, after so many years, it's so good to have a chat with you through the ether, as it were. You know, we can't connect face to face, but we connect through the internet and the good services of Zoom. So good to talk to you.
And nice to catch up, John. Yeah, it's been a few years. So it's nice to see you and good to hear you living a good life up in Queensland.
Absolutely. Well, it's only 24 degrees outside at the moment, so, you know, it's a bit chilly for us, really. But listen, I mean, I read something, your colleagues sent me something about some research that Amadeus has been completing recently. And the world in which we live now has changed so much. I mean, one of the biggest impacts here on the Sunshine Coast is people who've moved here and are telecommuting or working from home and running businesses in Melbourne or Sydney. I was even talking to a guy the other day who's running a business in Singapore from the Sunshine Coast because he wants to live here. So I think the research you had undertaken, or the results said that Australians were increasingly opting for a flexible, nomadic work life. So we're getting back to the Bedouins and the Romani gypsies and so on. But I mean, it's really interesting stuff because it's very, very contemporary at this time. And it's very interesting to me that Amadeus would be involved in such a process and such a that. But how do you think that's going to impact the traveling customer?
Look, I think, obviously with what we're seeing in the last 18 months, we've seen a lot of change, especially in the business community. We've got customers who have got staff who are relocating to Queensland, Tasmania, all over Australia. We're seeing lots of opportunities where those people are relocating for either better quality of life or the organisation has allowed them to move interstate, or in some cases, we've got people who have moved to New Zealand. So what we're seeing that obviously diversification, the office is a place where now you can meet virtually as well as physically. What we're seeing is quite a lot of those people moving, and what we see going forwards is those people will start to then commute back into regional offices or head offices. We've got a number of examples where we've got customers who have moved to Queensland and Tasmania. They will be coming back to the southern states or head office once or twice a week. Those trips wouldn't have happened. We've always had people commuting Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, but research we've done and some of the numbers we're seeing, we see that coming back, and obviously that's going to take time, given we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but we do see an increase in business travel, given the amount of people that are locating outside of the head office's state. Obviously, that will take time, and we're watching those numbers with interest.
Jane Herdlicker, the CEO of Virgin, made a statement last week about that she thinks business travel is going to take a long time to come back. It's a sideways question in a sense to our discussion, but do you think that's true?
Look, it's hard to identify. I mean, obviously, what we're looking at is we're looking at different customer segments, online, corporate, leisure. I think, the IATA number, we look at the IATA numbers because obviously IATA is the body for the airlines, and those airlines globally have very mixed markets right now. They also have very mixed market segments right now. If I look at New Zealand, New Zealand has come back a lot faster than Australia for domestic, because ultimately they are more advanced in their domestic market and commuting. So I think each market is very different, and it's hard to, it's patchy. It's really patchy.
Sure.
We're seeing some customers that are doing well in the backdrop, and that are doing some that are just playing catch up at the moment. And each market is very different. New Zealand's very different to Australia. And Europe, America. So it's really hard to say it's not coming back. It's just a matter of where you're located and your customer base.
But I mean, all this variation these days, and areas with which we are not familiar anymore, because I think the thing that most of us have learned over the last, say, 15 months or so is that nothing is cast in stone. It's the goalposts are not even being moved. Somebody chopped them up and they've built a fire with them, and so it makes life really tough. So how is that going to impact the travel industry in its various sectors? We talked about business, but what about the leisure side? And I'm interested in how this will impact Amadeus and how Amadeus is preparing for this impact, or which is an ongoing process, I'm sure.
Yeah, look, I think we take it in stages. So if I look at what the airline team are doing for airline customers, you know, they're developing technology to ensure a more touchless journey through airports. Our airport team, our airline team are working on the safe travel ecosystem, which includes our hospitality group. So, you know, if I look at how does a passenger get from A to B, stay overnight, and then come back, you know, Amadeus at the middle of the travel ecosystem is looking at all those touch points and trying to find ways of making it less touch, give people more in being able to go on that journey. If I look at in the retail space, retail is very much looking at domestic opportunities, trans-Tasman opportunities. The home-based travel model, I think, has been for a number of years. And if I go back to some previous roles, you know, the US has been in this space for 20 years. Australia sort of picked up on it 15 years ago. Now what we're seeing is our technology over the last 6 or 7 years has really played into the home-based travel agency and their capability to operate anywhere. You know, the old days of having to load a disc and having hardware, that's all been gone for several years with Amadeus. So I think in that case, the home-based travel model we're seeing is being supercharged. We've got a number of customers with 500-600 home-based consultants, and that's continuing to increase. So our technology and the ability to remove touch, be it in, you know, booking engines, be it through airports, the Amadeus ethos really through this pandemic is how can we avoid touch at all costs, and how can we help each customer through the customer journey to remove that touch. And that's crucial, especially for retail.
No, it is. And I mean, we've done quite a bit of work. We did some webinars with travel managers not so long ago. And that was all about the fact of the growth of their business and how their future is obviously, and has been from the beginning, with travel agencies working from home. So Amadeus has generated software, I presume, to make it easy for these travel agents to work from home on laptops or notebooks or whatever, and communicate with their clients,
Absolutely. I think, you know, if you go back several years where we deployed Cell Connect, you can use it on your phone, you can use it on an iPad, you can use it on a laptop, any device, you can be mobile anywhere. So a real example, 2 years ago, I was flying back from Auckland. I had a travel consultant behind me. She had a situation to get someone back from South America. She was on her iPhone, rebooking flights in the seat behind me for a customer in South America to get him back to Australia. So where we were 4 or 5 years ago has put us in very, very good stead for what is becoming, you know, more consultants operating from home than ever before. And through this pandemic, our customers were in a very good position where, you know, travel companies had to move people home very quickly. They were able to deploy very easily and pick up as if they were in the office.
And I think one of the messages that came through to me very clearly with lots of this activity as well was the value of travel agents in terms of when the proverbial hits the fan, without wanting to use a crude expression, and you're located somewhere and it's all gone wrong, as it did with COVID, a travel agent is vital in getting it sorted. And equally so, many travel agents have been doing nothing for the last several months except sorting out refunds. We know some travel companies have not been so good at it, but let's not go there. But I know that many travel agents have been doing nothing but that. And it's been costing them money. And I read something today that 57% of travel agents in the UK will not survive going forward. You know, it's quite amazing. But there's been a boom in domestic travel here in Australia. So how has Amadeus been able to help and facilitate that boom in domestic travel?
Look, I think, you know, our technology doesn't have borders. So the reality is, you know, anybody that's been using our technology, it doesn't matter whether it's domestic or international. The capability really becomes making sure they've got the content, making sure that in most cases, as people have been stood down and they're coming back up, that the technology access and ease is there for them. I think we're seeing more and more travel companies move to a situation of home-based and office. So again, it gets back to my original point, which is with the Cell Connect platform, you know, the reality is doesn't matter whether you're booking a Sydney-London or a Sydney-Melbourne, the capabilities there. We're seeing massive growth right now in Australia for hotel bookings. So our hotel bookings our hotel bookings attached to air is enormous. What we've seen with our retail customers, where historically there've been a very, very high percentage of international bookings, they have been able to change and move to domestic and move very, very quickly. So being able to put the content, the air, the hotel or the car through our system has made it very easy for them to be able to make those queries, while at the same time, apply booking fees or service fees, even for domestic. So having these discussions with domestic consultants, customers are saying that they would prefer to deal with the agency because there's a place, there's a name, and some of them have had bad experience. Some of these customers have had bad experiences with, getting refunds from suppliers. Where domestically they're dipping their toe back in the water, and then they're looking to take on, short haul travel such as the Tasman across to New Zealand for these school holidays or the Christmas period.
Yeah. I mean, looking forward now, we're all optimistic that the borders will open. Okay, we're fairly unique in the world in having a ban on travel internationally, and that's a highly contentious issue with many, many people, of course. But the borders will open. And for example, cruising will start again, whether it be domestic or whatever. So how is Amadeus preparing for this? It's going to be an onslaught, isn't it? In terms of once it all starts, because there's so much pent-up demand in cruising, in international travel and so on. So how's Amadeus preparing for that when it all gets going again?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's been interesting, probably more over the last 6 weeks we've seen, and we've seen a number of our customers basically come back on board and bring their staff back on board. And, as our technology evolves on a rapidly ongoing basis, some of these people have been out of the market for a couple of months, or in some cases up to 12 months. So one of the things we've had to do is bring back refresher courses and make sure they can do it online. So if I look at 2020 in Australia, it was our biggest year of training that we've ever undertaken. And the first 5 months of this year is up about 17% again. So this is people coming back and doing refresher on how to access the system, how to use the system. The system evolves, as I touched on, quite regularly. How to book the car, how to book the hotel, getting beyond what has historically been just an air tool to be able to book other content. So we're very much focused on the retraining, the upskilling, and the evolution of our product. We've got NDC, which is coming into the market, and Amadeus is developing to that content. So again, if you're booking NDC content, domestically or trans-Tasman at the moment, because of the international borders, it's what does that look like? How does that content come into the system? So it's very much around re-education and upskilling.
Yeah.
That's really been quite positive, and it's also been really positive to see agency owners putting their staff on refresher courses. Yeah. Because to your point, when it comes back, you want the staff and the team members to be fully upskilled.
To be ready, yeah.
And ready. So I think we've got products, for instance, if I look at the corporate space, mobile messenger, which is really a tool to find out where your staff are, should there be an emergency or a crisis. We're seeing corporate agencies coming to us and saying, we need this because our corporate customers are asking for a duty of care product. So Amadeus Mobile Messenger fits into that. So they're investing in that product, they're investing in that tool, the upskilling of that for the staff and for their teams, and then the education for their corporate customers. We are seeing quite a number of our customers get ahead of this curve to look to what's required when international borders do open up. But, even still with the bubble with the Tasman, we've got a lot of customers that still want to be able to have this duty of care tool, because if there's an outbreak, they want to know where people are, what they need to do, and how quickly they need to move to adjust and either bring people back or inform the travelling corporate customer of what's going on.
Yeah. You know what amazes me about all this is, just imagine if we'd have had this pandemic in the days when you were a youngster and you had a fax machine in the office, and you were mystified about how you could put a piece of paper in one end and it would appear the other end, And surely the speed of technology, the speed of, in Australia, NBN, and throughout the world, and internet speed, is critical in all this, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, you couldn't do what you want to do or achieve what you want to achieve without fast internet speeds in general. And also the awareness of people. I mean, I've got 5-year-old grandchildren, and they know more about technology than I do. But there you go, that's not difficult. So these digital nomads have emerged. So we have Justin Montgomery, a digital nomad. Is this rise in this digital nomad environment, is that being reflected globally? Because I remember when I was working in the US in the 90s, we talked then about, you know, agents working from home. Another element of that is fee for service, you know, charge for your services, because you have all this skill and knowledge. It's not about percentages. So is that all reflected? The workation, I wanted to ask you what a workation is as well. So yeah, a lot of questions there.
Well, I think the digital nomad, I think, you know, we did the travel trends report, and countries, you know, like Croatia, Barbados, had seen massive increases in search for people relocating to those destinations. So these research papers that we do, these white papers that we do that can be found on our site, reflect a lot of these trends. And I think, you know, the digital nomad was something that we sort of started talking about several years ago. I think to your point around what is workation, I mean, workation was, you know, you've always been ahead of the curve, John. I mean, you moved 12 years to Queensland. You know, that is really around the relocation of somebody to another location for their work with the blessing of the organisation. So I think the digital nomad was a precursor to that. And, you know, in particular, if I look at Amadeus, we've got staff that are located in this region, for instance. I've got staff in New Zealand, Australia, APAC, that are looking after customers within the region and quite simply are able to work in these locations regardless of time difference. But as long as they pick up the time difference with the customers, there's no problem. We've had people relocate from New Zealand to Australia to look after New Zealand customers. So, you know, that is, I suppose, where we are today with workations. I think digital nomad, again, was a precursor, but we are definitely seeing a large increase in those people relocating for business to other states, other countries, with the blessing of the organisation, obviously. And I think, you know, all organisations are grappling with this, I think, but the option now with technology provides that ability to relocate. And some of the corporate customers that we're speaking to with that relocation still want people to be able to come in once a week, once a month to their regional office or their head office location. And those people will come back in, they will fly back in. So I think, you know, examples of regional Australia, you've seen the real estate in southeast Queensland, in northern New South Wales, in regional Victoria. You know, these spikes are really the effect of what we're seeing as work, which are people move out. You know, we used to call them tree changes and sea changes. And that was the digital nomad. Now the workation is very much work wherever you're able to, based on the organisation's blessing. And
look, I mean, one of my comments I was going to ask you about a question was, are these trends here to stay? Well, there's no doubt they're here to stay. And I think a lot of companies are finding it hard sometimes to embrace that if they work in the more traditional model, whereas smarter companies like Amadeus are saying, right, this is the space in which we fit, and we need to make it work for us and work for the industry. So listen, thank you for your time today, Justin. It's really appreciated having a chat with you. It's always exciting talking to you as a visionary in the business. And I think that visionaries survive better in this business today, because it's not about, I remember once speaking at a conference about change. And I said, well, actually change is the norm. You know, staying the same is not going to happen anymore. And here we are in this world now with Amadeus leading the pack in terms of this continuum of change as we move forward and providing the right technology to the industry. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Justin Montgomery, thank you.
Thanks, John. Lovely to catch up again.
And you.